There's a guy in there, he's a Navy SEAL, Josh Bridges, and he has this saying, and it's pay the man. And he basically lays it out this way. He's like, the rent's going to come due on your body and your life at some point. You have to choose whether you're going to pay the man today or pay him later. And so, like, that's became kind of my mantra, is that I started making the decision before the decision had to be made.
Welcome to the Four Fires Podcast, where we talk about winning in all four of the essential areas of life.
Welcome to the Four Fires Podcast. My name is Alan Kemper, and today I am here with Josh Sells and Stephen Bowen, and we are going to dig into the physical fire. So guys, why don't you introduce yourself, give the audience a little overview of what stage of life you're in, what do you do, and then we'll dig into a little bit about the physical fire.
Well, this is Stephen Bowen. I am 50 years old, and which is hard for me to say, but it's a reality. I am married almost 18 years. Actually, this weekend will make 18 years. And we have 4 children, 12, 10, and twins that are 6. So I'm the old guy with young children. So that's kind of my camp that I'm in. I work in operations. I've been in manufacturing my entire career, and with a couple different companies. But I'm in operations and been through a lot with that. Came out of college, went into it. After 2 years, the company I was with sent me to get a master's. Did that for 2 years and came back. Ever since then, I've been doing different roles. And in that first company, I was in 7 different plants and 2 continents.
Wow.
Certainly seen a lot, bounced around a lot, and learned a lot through trial and error. And all of that. So that's a little summary of me.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
My name is Josh Sells. I am 42 and married to my wife, Mandy. We are also about to finish up 18 years in September, so on that same track. We have 3 kids, Owen, who's 14, Benjamin, who's 12, and Livy, who is 8. Keep us busy. We're getting into the teenage years, which are proving to be a lot more difficult than I ever thought they would be. We all think we're good parents until we're actually parents.
My kids will never do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So just got finished grand opening a brand new Chick-fil-A restaurant here in LaGrange. So we're about a month in, still have no idea what we're doing with this big facility. We went from one of the 11 barrel roofs left in the chain, which is one of Chick-fil-A's worst designs that they've ever had, to one of 4 of their new, what they call P14, Store of the Future thing. And so we went from, old and beat up and antiquated to new and cutting edge. And it's, So we're trying to figure it out right now and trial and error, figuring out how not to do it a lot of the days. But just thankful for it, thankful for the opportunity, and just thankful to be here.
So one of the reasons that I wanted specifically to dig into this conversation about the physical fire with you guys is because, we know each other through church. And I've observed, I know of what you're doing professionally, and I've observed your families, and I know that it is not your full-time job to wake up in the morning and go hit the gym, or that you're not living on trust funds, or that you're not at that stage of life where, the kids are gone, or the stage of life, I had a friend of mine who was telling me how busy he was, and he was like, me and my wife, we're doing all this thing. I was like, oh, yeah, and you guys are taking care of the kids? And he goes, oh, no, we don't have kids yet. And I was like, you're not busy. Sorry. I don't even, you said busy and you have no idea.
Right.
And so I just know that you guys are living in these worlds that have a lot of things pulling. In the work world, neither of your jobs are very passive. They're both high jobs that require a high degree of attention from you, maybe at any moment in time. And the decisions that you make impact lots and lots of people. And at home, you are pulled in lots of directions between raising teenagers and littles, and we have these wives, and we want to spend time and invest with them. And yet, you are both people who are, over 40, and what we like to say, the top half of your torso is larger than the bottom half of your torso. When you live in the United States, that doesn't happen by accident. So, Stephen, will you just kind of give us a little bit of your physical fire journey? How's that path played out for you? And maybe if you want to dig into what is the number one challenge for you in that space right now?
Sure. And it's interesting that you use the term journey, because that is actually a very good descriptor. And especially at my age now at 50, I was heavily engaged in sports all my life. My dad played baseball and basketball in college and had a football scholarship that he turned down. So it's kind of, one of those things where it was, all right, I kind of had in the back of my mind, I'm going to play something in college.
Yep.
And in high school, I did football, basketball, track, ended up going to college and playing football. And so through that, I did in high school, I developed a very strong work ethic with weights.
Yep.
I was tall and skinny. Okay, so I constantly wanted to put on weight. And it was very hard. I saw other guys that could look at weights and they would put on weight. And I would stay in the gym 2.5, 3 hours.
Wow.
And not gain what they gained.
Yep.
And so finally that work, paid off, and I made some slow but steady gains. And then when I got in college, my body started maturing a little bit. And so I was actually able to ramp up a little bit of those gains. But I always enjoyed being in the weight room. I kind of became a gym rat. And so in getting out of college, just naturally, there's no question in my mind, like, okay, I'm going to go to work. As soon as I leave work, I'm going to the gym for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I was just on that. That was my cycle.
Yeah.
Just because it had been a way of life for me. And if anybody were to ask me, well, what are you working out for? Well, because I got to.
Yeah.
There's no other answer, just because that's what I do. Well, as I've started approaching 30 and then mid-30s, the way I worked out, I realized I've got to change. I can't be.
You doing like heavy weights?
With kind of the concept of I got to get bigger and stronger.
Okay.
And I started realizing, like, what are you doing? Because I don't need to be lifting heavy all the time.
Yep.
I started having some injuries.
Yep.
I had some injuries in college, but I started kind of causing some injuries.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I need to step back and rethink, like, what am I doing this for? And when I finally got myself to recognize that, okay, I'm doing this for long-term health, it kind of changed my strategy.
Yep.
I started working out a little bit different, started being a little bit more intentional about what I'm doing.
Yep.
And then as I got into my mid-40s, it changed significantly.
Okay.
I realized that I was one of those guys that going, all right, I'm going to do chest and back today. Tomorrow I'm going to go do biceps and triceps, and I'm going to do legs the next day. I started realizing, of course, I was kind of researching that my body's not recovering well doing that. If anything, I'm kind of slowly losing. And so I changed to where I started working out different. I started doing shorter workouts, but more of full body workouts.
Okay.
Because I'd read a lot about that as far as how your body changes and the recovery changes. But that also kind of worked hand in hand with what I need to do, because you can imagine working in my job is very consuming, my current role. So I spend a lot of time every day. And so my habit, my routine gets into where the mornings are sacred. I wake up really early. I think Josh is this way too. And so my alarm goes off at 4:30 every day, because that's my time to have some prayer time. It's my time I catch up on email, try to do some reading, and then I've got about 30 minutes there that I typically work out in my basement.
Yeah.
And everybody's sleeping. And with my kids, I love spending time with them. I get home usually fairly late in the evening.
Yep.
So when I'm there, I want to spend time with them. Well, if they're asleep, I don't feel guilty, right?
Right.
And so I'm working out while they're all sleeping because I don't want to come home when they haven't seen me all day and say, hold on, guys,
Yeah.
I'm going to the gym or I'm going to the basement. I'll come get you in about 40 minutes or 30 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
So that time is really sacred for me in a lot of ways. Like I said, it's my time to spend time with God. It's my time to then shift into, okay, let me go work out, and I'm going to try to work out intensely but quickly.
Yeah.
And that way, the rest of the day, I feel good.
Yep.
Knowing, okay, you know, I was able to do my routine. I'm prepared for the day.
How many times a week is that? I mean, that's great in theory. Does that show up 5 days a week for 6 days a week? What is
I
that?
would love to say it's every weekday.
Yeah.
And I try to do that, but it ends up being usually about 3 days during the week and maybe one day on the weekend as far as working out.
Yep. In your current state, you talked about a shift in style of workout more to a more full body. What's the current challenge for you? The biggest challenge in kind of protecting or maintaining the physical fire at this stage of life?
Time.
Time.
It is purely me disciplining myself with time because my current job can get out of hand if I allow it from a time consumption standpoint. So I have to be very disciplined about that and to know when it's like, all right, I'm cutting it off.
Yep.
I can't, you know what, it's just going to be where it is. And when I go into work, I'm going to deal with that because I got to have this time. You know, this is important. And I've already seen, because it's working out's always been easy for me from an early age because I developed that habit. But now I can see so clearly how so many guys just get completely out of shape and their body starts just crumbling. I can see it because if I'm not consistent for 2 weeks, I can see the difference and feel the difference immediately.
Yep.
And it eats at me.
Yeah.
And so I can see how easily that will happen, and from a standpoint professionally of how you can let that happen. Because you got all this pressure and stress for all these things, and you're like, I don't have time. I got to do all this.
Yeah.
And so I can see if you don't draw that line in the sand, how you can start going down that road of where it gets out of control.
Yeah. It's a winning in the short term versus winning in the long term.
Right.
So you know, we know long term, I'm going to be way better off if I actually keep doing the work. But it seems right now that I'll be way better off if I just don't work out today and go, you know, acquiesce to the requests of my work.
Correct.
Josh, what's your story? What's your physical fire journey been like?
Yeah, so I'd love to say that mine got started the way his did. I didn't play college sports. I didn't do any of that. I wanted to.
For most of us, that's not
that's not
most
usual.
of our story. Yeah.
I was telling some of my staff today about doing this podcast, and they said, "Are you going to be alone?" I said, "No, I'm going to be with this other guy." I said, "He's older than I am, played college football, and looks like he could put pads on today and go play." So I'm like, there's not too many people who make me feel small, but Steven manages to do that. But so I was a baseball and football player in high school. I had a bone tumor in my right leg and had surgery on it when I was, I think 13 was the surgery. And then when I tried to return to sports after that, I continued to develop stress fractures in my leg and just finally had to give it up.
Yeah.
And so, which was a big part of, for me, it was a big part of my identity when I was growing up. Baseball, football, they were big things for me. It's kind of where I found my identity. And so I didn't really do much physical for a long time after that. It was just kind of became getting through college, working, trying to find a career, those kind of things. It was actually after we moved here to LaGrange, I think I was probably trying to remember off the top of my head, but I was probably 30 years old at the time, 31, something like that. And I was almost 300 pounds. Was about to go on high blood pressure medication. Felt like complete junk, like all the time. Had migraines like weekly. everything hurt, all these things. One day, just kind of looked in the mirror and was like, this is not where I want to be. Like, this is, and my father passed away when I was 14. And I just remember thinking to myself at that point, I want to be there for my kids when they get adults. When they're 30 years old, I would like to still be around. And this is not going to end well the way I'm going.
Yeah. How old were you when that kind of?
About 30, 31, somewhere around there. So I made a decision that I was going to try to start pursuing something. Interestingly enough, about that same time, I had a buddy who was a pastor here in town called me up and said, hey, can we go eat together, have lunch? And so we sat down, and he said, I'm going to go be a chaplain in the Army. I need to start training. And this guy was not very athletic at all. And I was like, you're going to do what? I kind of laughed. I thought it was a joke, but he was very serious. And he said, I'm starting to train with this guy that was in the Army. I need you to come run buffer for me and like run interference and work out with me because he's going to kill me. And I'm like, okay. And so he's like, we go to the gym at 4 a.m. I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
You go to the gym at 4 a.m.
I'm not getting up at 4 a.m. and going to the gym with you. He's like, Josh, I really need you to come. And so I was like, I need to make this life change, all this, but this was not the life change I had planned. So I started going to the gym with them. He ended up going into the Army, leaving, and I somehow got left with Army guy. And fortunately, we changed gyms and had to move our time to 5 a.m., which was a little better than 4 a.m. 3:30 alarms were not pleasant,
tough.
But I started seeing change in my body, and it was very noticeable. I dropped a lot of weight.
Yep.
Everybody was kind of like, "Wow, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, you can do it too. You can get up at 5 a.m. and come to the gym." And we convinced a couple friends to come with us. They fell off, and then he moved out of the area, and I kept doing it. It had just become a habit at that point.
You're doing mostly weights?
Just weights, yeah. So I was going to one of the local gyms in town, just doing weights. But, you're just kind of lifting weights. You see these plateaus. You lose all this weight, and then it's like, okay, now what? Like, what are we doing now? And around the same time, I'd found out about this thing called rucking, because I hate running with a passion. Like, I cannot stand to run. I played offensive line and I played first base. So I tell people I'm good for about 5 yards of running. That's about it. I'm really fast for 5 yards. But after that, no, it's not good. And so somebody, I don't remember how I found out about rucking, but it was like, you put a backpack on with some weight and you go for a walk. And I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah.
Like, it's heavy weight. Like, that's fine. Like, let's go do it. And so we had started going to Southcrest, and one of our friends at Southcrest was talking to my wife at like a Young Life board meeting one night, and he was like, she said something. She's like, yeah, Josh has started doing this thing called rucking. And he was like, wait, what? I ruck. I do all this. And so she put me in contact with him, and that started this multi-year journey of going out and doing really crazy things and being in Atlanta at weird hours of the night, carrying logs and doing all kinds of stuff. So that became kind of a part of that journey, and just learning to do hard stuff and realizing that you're capable of doing a lot more than you think you are.
Yep.
And there's something freeing about that, and there's something just that makes every other thing that you do throughout the day just seem a lot easier when you've already done the hardest thing. I think they attribute it to
like an endorphin hit or a...
Yeah, but they attribute it to an author, Tom Sawyer author was, I can't even think of his name right now. But he said, if you eat a frog first thing in the morning, you've already done the hardest thing you're going to do all day.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's kind of, that kind of became my mantra, is like, if I do this first thing in the morning, everything else I do is much easier.
Yeah.
Then about 6 years ago, I had a couple friends that were like, dude, you need to come to CrossFit. And I was like, you people are crazy. Like I've seen and heard what you guys do. Like I have no desire to do that. And but my gym workouts were just becoming stale. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I kind of enjoyed. I don't like big crowds, but I like one-on-one conversation. Yep. And so I really had enjoyed having that workout partner to talk through workout, push each other. It's hard to push yourself when you're alone.
Yeah.
And so it's, that kind of piece. And so they finally convinced me to go to CrossFit. I remember my first day there, like I saw the workout on the board and I'm like, oh, that's not terrible. Like I can do that. Like, yeah, it's going to be great. And then I remember laying on the ground and literally thinking to myself, like, I'm going to have to call Mandy.
I'm going to throw up.
Yeah, I'm going to have to call Mandy and she's going to have to come get me. This is crazy. Like, why? And I remember one of my friends, I called him the next week and I'm like, when does this stop sucking? Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, it never stops. You just get faster and stronger.
Yeah.
And after about a month of it, I fell in love with it. I really did. There was something about it. There was something about the shared hardship aspect of it. Like what I loved about rucking, this was every day with this. And I was, the day I walked into that gym, I was already one of the strongest people in there. I was able to squat 400 pounds at that point. I was deadlifting like over 400 pounds at that point. So I walked in already having that base. The cardio base I did not have. I mean, I was like, this is horrible. Like, what in the world? But I fell in love with it, and I made some really good friends there. And made some great relationships, and it just became the day, you walk in, you're like, oh, why are we here? Why do we do this? I mean, you ask that question every single day, like, why are we here? And I've fallen in love with it. Now, my journey through that, as I've gotten older, I've had to learn to back off a little bit. The competitive nature, the competitive aspect of it is not the way it started out. And so when, I kind of started CrossFit because I kind of liked the competitive piece of it. I liked all that. But I had some injuries and dealt with the body just not recovering the way it once did.
Yeah.
And I had to remind myself, you did this so you could be alive later. And if you can't walk, you're really defeating the purpose.
Yeah.
So the last couple of years, I've had some injuries in it, and usually it's because I don't check my ego at the door.
Yeah.
And so especially the last year, I've really been much smarter about the way I approach even CrossFit. Is that people say, "Oh, you do CrossFit?" Yeah. I'm like, "Yeah." And I go in and I feel how it's going to feel that day. We joke around, we lift heavy. Last year, I finally hit my goal of deadlifting 500 pounds for the first time in my life. But there's other days that I don't even go above 200 because it just doesn't feel right. And if it doesn't feel right, then I'm not going to do it.
Yep.
And I've just kind of learned that because I tell people it's not about the number anymore to me.
Yep. And
so I don't do this to prove something anymore. I'm not here to beat somebody. Now, every once in a while, if it's feeling good, me and my buddy, I have a good friend that we started like a week within a week of each other. So we've been working out pretty much every morning for 6 years now. There's just some mornings like he's the same way. He's about 2 years older than I am. There's just some mornings we just kind of know it's like, okay, we're going to go, you and me. And, we're laying on the ground dead after the workout. But I mean, that's just kind of fun. If the stars align that morning, but there's mornings where he'll want to push. I'm like, I'll joke around. I'm like, you go over there. I'm not, like, I have no desire to do it this morning. But I just had to remember what my purpose in working out is I don't work out to work out.
Yeah.
That's not the purpose. We joke around that, you work out so you can look good naked, like those kind of things. And while would be nice, that's still not my goal anymore. And it's not to lift heavy weights. If it happens, it happens. If it's feeling good, then great.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I tell people now is through the CrossFit thing, there's a professional CrossFitter. And that was the other thing that I learned. I didn't even know CrossFit was a sport, but it is a sport. But there's a guy in there. He's a Navy SEAL, Josh Bridges. And he has this saying, and it's pay the man. And he basically lays it out this way. He's like, the rent's going to come due on your body and your life at some point. You have to choose whether you're going to pay the man today or pay him later. Mm-hmm. And so, like, that's became kind of my mantra, is that I started making the decision before the decision had to be made. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about, people ask, how do you get up so early? It's because I decided a long time ago that I was going to get up this morning to go work out. Mm-hmm. I'm not deciding at 4:30 when that alarm goes off. Mm-hmm. If I decide at 4:30,
we know what that decision is going to look
correct,
like.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, everybody, I say that, I'm like, getting up and doing CrossFit at 5 a.m. sounds good at 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound good at 4:30 in the morning. And so you have to have already made that decision. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how I made that decision, and that's kind of how I approach it now.
Yeah, I like that. You know, Josh, your story is really about, your fitness story has involved a lot of community. Mm-hmm. Sounds like that you have found people to, almost in every stage of your journey, there were other people involved. Mm-hmm. Stephen, for you, it sounds like there's a lot more in the, I have chosen to be disciplined in like kind of your own personal routine. Are there other people who've walked that journey with you, or does that, or is that more of a solo walk for you?
So there's certainly been a lot of people I've worked out with, and I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. When I've got someone consistent that I can work out with, I have enjoyed that in years past. In fact, that's the way I always worked out. I always had someone, that I would either drag to the gym with me, or they were, mutually committed, like, all right, let's go, let's do this. But here for the last several years, I haven't had that, also because I'm trying to do it this time in the morning. I haven't really been able to match up with anybody consistently. Mm-hmm. And so I work out primarily at home in my basement. Mm-hmm. But I certainly love when I do have that partner, and we can match up on times and routines. It helps. It helps because it's tough when going into a gym by yourself is one thing. At least you kind of get a little motivation by seeing other people work out. And that's why I do have a gym membership, because on the weekend, a lot of times I'll go in there early Saturday or Sunday morning before church. When it's early morning and everybody in the house is asleep, and you're walking down some steps and turning on lights in a basement, it's tough. Yep. It's tough because sometimes you walk down and you're like, all right, am I going to do this? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you have to sit there and stare at the weights for a few minutes, like, okay, come on. Yeah. And you have to motivate yourself. Yeah. And obviously, like anything else, as you get that habit, it's not as hard. It's never necessarily easy, but it's like, all right, I'm going downstairs. Yep. I've got 30 minutes. I'm gonna hit it hard for 30 minutes, and I'm gonna get this done. And so you have to be very intentional with that. To me, when you have a partner, you've got that accountability, you've got that encouragement, you've got a little bit of that competitiveness with each other, which is healthy, and it does so many good things. So working out by myself is not my first choice. It's just right now in the period I'm in right now, I have to do that right now.
That's right. We talk about. I've got a lot of business owners who come in and talk about mentality, and one of my friends said, "Look, there's employee mentality and there's owner mentality. An employee mentality looks for an excuse, and an owner looks for a way to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And when you own your own physical, when we say this is going to be, I'm going to own my physical journey, then you set your alarm for 4:30, or you go find a buddy who's going to hold you accountable, or you decide 3 months ago, because you tell everybody, hey, I'm going to be at the gym at 4:30 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning. Like, you do the things that ensure you win, rather than looking for because there's plenty of excuses out there. You can find an excuse. Right. There's a broad spectrum of people who are in their For Fires journey. There are people out there who who really have never put any energy or any log onto their physical fire. Obviously, for the both of you, these have been, Stephen, for you, this has been almost a lifelong journey. This is something that you were brought up in. You know, Josh, your story, and that's more similar to my story. I didn't really figure out how to pull the exercise and then specifically the eat levers, and really until my late 30s. You know, I was always kind of identified as like the chubby kid, the non-athlete. So people got to go, why? Why is this even worth it? What do you notice about men in their 40s that makes them, who have put energy into their physical fire? What do you see in them that you don't see in the other guys who don't get up at 4:30 or don't do the hard thing? What do you get beyond just some general health from about these kinds of people?
Well, I'll say the first thing in my mind is, to me, what I notice is if they're disciplined in that area, very often that carries over.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that that's why they're disciplined in the other areas. Maybe that's maybe those other areas why they're able to be disciplined here, but it usually is a carryover. And so, you know, I know if I see someone that's in their 40s, and it's obvious to me that they're trying to keep their body healthy, right? I'm not saying they're some big bodybuilder, but they're trying to keep their body healthy. You can tell they're intentional.
Yep.
There's a little bit of instant respect, like, okay.
Yep.
You know, and my assumption, because of what I've seen, is I assume there's some pretty good discipline professionally and probably in some other areas of their life.
Yep.
Just because I see evidence of discipline in that area.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I see is a little bit of that carryover that I've seen enough of it that I usually kind of have an assumption there that I bet there's a lot of that in their professional life and in their if they're Christian, you know, in their spiritual life, there's some evidence that I bet you carries over.
Yep.
So I would say, I mean, I 100% agree with you in that. I think going down another trail on this would be the confidence that it brings to you. Is that when I think about it, I think about the confidence of just understanding of what I'm capable of. So when I'm faced with hard task, I don't have a mindset of inability. I don't have a mindset of fear. And, you know, I like to, you know, I tell people, you know, I like to squat because I want to be able to get off the couch or get off of a seat for the rest of my life. So I'm never going to stop squatting, you know. And so that confidence of knowing that my training has put me in a place where, you know, I'm able to, if I needed to, again, I'm not going to go run 26 miles, but if I needed to run all out for 400 meters, I could give you that because I know what I'm capable of doing for that moment. If something heavy needs to be picked up, like, I don't have to go, okay, well, who's going to do this? Like, you know, I had a tree fall in my backyard a couple weeks ago and had a couple buddies come over with chainsaws and we're chopping things, and I was picking up the logs and carrying them down to the street. And they're like, I would have just rolled those. I'm like, yeah, but it's faster, and I can. And it's just that I know that, yeah, like, I don't know how that's going to happen, but when other people look at it, I don't know how we're going to do that. I'm like, well, I do, because I can pick that up.
Yeah.
I can, you know, jump up on that because I work on that stuff. I try to keep my body in a place where hopefully the demands of the day I can meet. And that's a good place to be. Not a good place to feel like when there's physical demands or anything like that, and you're just like,
And you have to be afraid, or
I'm not really sure. You know, my kid wants to go out and throw a football with me, and it's like, I don't know that I can do that.
Yeah, my son talks about he wants to go elk hunting. He wants to go elk hunting. Well, he's 8 now.
Right.
I'm 45.
Right.
So when he's 16,
Yes.
right? Like
Yeah.
I've got to be able to
Yes.
to throw a backpack on and go to the Rockies
Yeah.
and hang with that kid, that 16-year-old, because I want to be able to do life with him in his maturing years. I want to be able to go on adventures with him. And so the work I do now prepares me for the ability to enjoy that later. But I think both of what you hit on, I think a common misperception for us around the Four Fires is when we talk about the physical fire, is that everybody, you're going to go to the gym and you're going to try to get shredded and you're going to try to, or max lift or whatever. And honestly, we're not prescriptive about whether you're a runner or you're a lifter, or we just think that you should be intentional with your body and you design what you want out of it. And that's going to change over different seasons of our lives, but I think a common thread is, one, the discipline of that exercise flows over into a lot of different areas of our life. And I do think that the ability to know that we can do hard things, that we're in charge. When we say get up at 4:30, that we can make that happen. And I think that both that discipline bleeds over, and also that confidence bleeds over into all the other areas of our lives. I think it lets us lead other men and women better. I think it helps us lead our families better. I think it helps us to design our day better. And none of that, we're not even talking about the physical benefits that you get. I'm not even, increased muscle mass is wonderful for longevity and and it does make you look better and it does help you pick up the logs. But one of the primary benefits that I've noticed by being intentional in this space is just who I get to be in all of these other areas. So
I think one important thing there too, like for me, I've got 2 sons, one's 10 and one's 6.
Yep.
But just from the way my dad raised me, he was one of those guys where he kind of always vowed, as long as God gives me the health, I'm going to be able to play with the kids. I'm going to be able to run. I'm going to try to be strong. And so I know when I was working out in high school, he'd come out there and work out with me.
Wow.
And he always did that stuff. Always. And it was kind of my model. And it's like, I want not just my sons, but my daughters too, but I want them to see that, hey, God's given you a body. Take care of it.
Yep.
Obviously we're going to have limitations at times, but if you've got the health to be able to do it, then okay, try to protect that. Try to be a good steward with your body.
Yeah.
Try to exercise. Don't just sit on the couch and let it go.
Yeah.
And so I want them to see that as they grow up, that hey, number one is your spirituality, but you also have a body that you've been given. And you need to be intentional about taking care of it.
Yep.
And I really want them to learn that lesson and see that.
Well, and here's a scary quote. Our children will become the men and women that we are today. Like the best model that they have, that my son has for what a 45-year-old male should look like, is this guy. And so if there's something that I look at in my life and I'm not proud of and I wouldn't want for my son, the very best thing I can do to help him is to change me. And this is where, I think you were talking about, I feel guilty if I walk in the door and I don't go to, or, I take time away from my kids. But if we give up our model, like us being that example for them so that we can spend time with them, which one's the greater gift? The extra 30 minutes a day, or them growing up with a dad who they go, yeah, my dad was always physically fit.
Yeah. No, I fully expect my 10-year-old son, he's about at that point where I'll start incorporating him in working out with me.
Yeah.
And that may change me to working out in the afternoons at that point. But I've already start pulling him down there to do, hey, let's do some push-ups. Let's see if you can do some pull-ups. But I kind of get excited that is, the day I can start pulling them in and, all right, let's work out together. My
Yeah.
daughter, who's 12, she actually works out with me occasionally on the weekends.
Yep.
And so because I want them to see, hey, by the way, when you work out, you should be sweating. You should be breathing hard. This is not a workout where you see someone in the gym reading a book while they're doing something like that. That's not going to get it.
Yeah.
And so
it's not.
that's what excites
Not.
me, being able to do that and spend time with them.
Yeah.
Or it's not jaw day.
Right.
Yeah.
Which a lot of them work too much.
Oh, it must be jaw day.
Yeah. Well, and that, we could probably do a whole nother conversation just around how do we make sure that we are teaching, because the gym for most of us is not a place where we bring our kids.
Right.
How do we usher them into, we recently went on a cruise and I went to the gym and I saw this dad there and he was taking his daughter around on the gym on the cruise ship and showing her how to use all the equipment. And I just had this moment of like, that's brilliant. Like it was, he wasn't putting any weight on. He just had her sit on all of the machines and go through the motions and get comfortable. And I really just had to walk up. I mean, I hope it wasn't really awkward, but I was like, this is so good what you're doing. And the next day, I'm there with my daughter. It's such a neat space that we don't get to often share with our kids.
Right.
And obviously has become important parts of our lives.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to even think about.
Well, and Owen, my oldest, he's 14, and he's, I call him man-child. He's 6 foot tall, 160 pounds. He's ripped. He walks around without a shirt on. I'm like, dude, you need to cover that up. Like, I don't need to be seeing that.
Not at that age. Yeah. He's excited.
Oh, yeah. No, he's very excited. But I've tried to get him to come to CrossFit with me. He doesn't want to get up early in the morning, but he told me that he wasn't going to run cross country this season. He was like, but I want to start working out with you because I want to get jacked like you. And I'm like,
that's not a bad thing for a son to say about a father.
Yeah. And so it's amazing when you think about that is, sometimes you wonder, you're like, am I setting the right example for my children? And for him to say, he basically said, I want to be strong and muscular like you are.
And that I notice and have respect for that.
Right.
And I would like to move in the direction of my father.
And so he said, I want you to teach me how you did it. Like, teach me what you did to get like that.
Yeah.
And so it was like, that's humbling when you realize that you have a lot more influence than you think you do.
Absolutely.
He won't admit that I'm cool like most of the time, but every once in a while you get that glimpse, that truth, and you're like, oh, he notices. He notices.
Right. Well, most of the important lessons in life are caught, not taught.
Right.
And if we can just live into it for them, that'll mean more than us telling them to go to the gym.
Right.
Just us go to the gym and they'll figure out like, this is how I'm supposed to live. I just want to thank you guys as leaders in our church, as leaders of your family. I look from a distance and I don't often see a lot of guys who are winning in all 4 areas of life. But I think you guys are knowingly or unknowingly on that path. And it's been interesting. I had this we'll finish with this comment. I talked to a pastor the other day. He's leading a congregation of about 300 people. And I was introducing the 4 fires to him, and I said, hey, so if you look out on your congregation, let's assume there's 150 guys in the room. I said, how many of them are 4-dimensional? And he's like, none. He's like, not a single one. We won't say what church this is. But he's like, there's not a single 4-dimensional guy in my congregation. He goes, I think I've got maybe one 3-dimensional guy. And I said, hey, so what would it look like if out of those 150 guys, 10, 15 of them were really 4-dimensional? That they were really well resourced. They were good at their craft, and they were well resourced. They had figured out how to convert that craft into cash, and that their people fire was burning strong. They had great friendships, and their families were sources of strength, not of stress. And that their physical bodies were strong. When they walked in the room, they had a presence about them, and then the discipline and the confidence that comes with that. And their purpose fire was strong, like that they were so connected to their Creator, and they were clear about the commitments that they're going to live into. I said, how would that change your church? He was like, it would night and day. He said, if I could have 10 or 15 of those guys in leadership within my church, he said, I would have people to point people who are having problems to. They would be models and examples. He said it would change the face of our church. And I think that the work that you guys have done in your individual lives and the work that you're doing in your families have provided a lot of stability for the church that we're a part of. So I appreciate that work. I will invite you. We are going to do, the Four Fires Tribe is going to do an Army Combat Fitness test here in LaGrange. I like the Army Combat Fitness test because it's graduated by age. So as we get older, we do less activities, and it's just a status check for us to kind of like see, where do I stand at this moment, and then where would I like to improve? So we'll put a link to that in the bio of this. If anybody's in the East Alabama, West Georgia area, and you want to participate, we'll invite you just to come out and have a good time. But I really thank you guys for being here for the podcast. We'll have you back sometime again, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
This is Alan Kemper, and we thank you for being a part of the Four Fires podcast. Check the link in the bio for more information about the Army Combat Fitness Test, and as always, live intentionally.